day we met. Your eyes so blue, me piercing through. I can't forget the day we met. Your smile so bright, it made me swoon. Our love is like a summer's day, hot and endless in a magic way. Whenever I see you, all I can think is my summer love. Been waiting for you, my love, my summer love.
What is up, Sub Romano fans? This is Titus Nietzsche Anderson for the Sub Romano podcast. How are you guys doing? Are you guys happy to see me? I'm getting older. When I was younger, people used to tell me that I look like Michael Jackson. Nobody says I look like Michael Jackson anymore. Anyway, I wanted to stop by and say hello. We're going to do a video cast this week on obstacles. The last time that I met with you guys, we had talked about flowcharts, and I gave you 7 or 8 different flowcharts that you can apply to your games. There were things like the heat map, the topographical map, the relationship map, influence maps, organizational charts, rate of change, and things like that, historical charts, and things that you can apply to your environment and see what type of information that you can get from your environment. This week, we're going to talk about obstacles. There's only 5 different categories of obstacles that you can run into. And this will give you some more clarity to your thinking, and you can divide those up and see what obstacles do I most likely run into, what's the percentages of success with this obstacle versus that obstacle, what do I need to prepare for, and things like that. There's just 5 broad categories, and so I'll go ahead and share those with you right now. And the first one is environment.
Perfect. No, I'm not. I'm hitting. You got that pig. You got that pig. Oh, man.
Okay, so the first obstacle in your way, and the most basic of all obstacles to anyone, is your environment. In movies, when there's an environmental challenge, you get the map out and then you plot your course to the goal. That's what gaming is about. It's about getting access to something. You want to cross the finish line, you want to get the gold, you want access to the keys, the codes, a room, a transport. That's what you're after. You're after access to something. How you overcome your goals is also usually just a few things. You outnumber them, you outpower them, you outsmart them, you outwork them, you outmaneuver them, you deceive them, or something like that. Whether you're actually able to do that in reality is 2 different things, but that's usually the nuts and bolts of it, or the basics of it, when you encounter an obstacle. So when it comes to your environment, things that you could run into that could be an obstacle to you that are normal for most of us would be things like animals. It could be the length of transit for you to get from your job to your work. It could be inclement weather. It could be not having the proper vehicles or equipment to engage in a game with in your environment. It could be not speaking the language or not knowing the customs. It could be unfamiliarity with the locations of stores and things like that. One of the blogs that I had posted before was called Choke Points, and the places where you're most likely to find yourself in a chokehold or in a choke point. Foreign places, foreign languages, hanging out with friends who you don't know, those are choke points. So that's something to keep in mind in your environment. That's our first category. If you don't remember the situational awareness video and podcast, I recommend you go through that. That's where we cover 4 different data sets that you can apply to your environment, like cause and effect, how did that get here? Temporal, how long has it been here? What was it like a year ago? Will it be this way next year based on this information? What would I expect about the next 10 years based on this information? Sample spaces. If I sell beach balls here in Los Angeles, do you think they would sell well in Miami? Am I ahead of the curve or am I behind the curve? And let's see, geographical, sample space, cause, effect, and temporal. So those are 4 basic ones that I had given you. Also, there is the acronym SORA, which means situation, objective, action, response, aftermath. It's SORA, S-O-A-R-A. And you can apply that to any new development in your environment or area and go, what's the situation? What's the objective we want to take on it? What's the action that we take on it? Or what's the objective? What do we want out of this situation? What's the action that we take to get that objective? What were the results of our action? And then after that, you have your aftermath. Never forget, there's always some aftermath. Even if you win the fight on the sidewalk, there's some aftermath. Somebody will come looking for you. A friend, a family member, a police officer. There's usually some aftermath, whether you win or lose. And I think that's it on environment. Okay, we're going to move on to number 2. All right, we have moved on to number 2. Number 2 is going to be personal. This one comes up a lot in gaming because the emphasis is always on you as a person. So this is a really easy category to go through. It's you versus the machine. It's your education. It's your preparation. It's who trained you, who mentored you. It's how qualified you are. It's are your personal habits carrying you to your goal, or do your personal habits carry you away from your goal? What do you habitually do? And how do you stack up to another person? What's your weight versus their weight? What's your punching power versus their punching power? What are your qualifications for the job versus their qualifications for the job? And things like that. If you want to explore your own personal power a little more thoroughly, I posted a video and a blog. It's called 7 Areas to Power. When I filmed it, I wasn't feeling that well, but the content is excellent, and I cover 7 different areas where you as a human being have power. We cover all of them. There isn't anything missing from those. Most people don't know where they have power. They only think I have it in my body or in my self-confidence, but there's actually 7 different areas. So if you don't know those, go check out the video and write them down. Make a grid. If you're in a competition with another team, another person, give yourself a number, give them a number. Write down the details about your strength, write down the details about their strength. Write down where you're weak, write down where they're vulnerable, and go all the way down that list. Won't take you very long to do it, and it should be really rewarding for you. All right, let's move on to number 3. Okay, number 3 is competition. I think number 2 and number 3 on this list have got to be the easiest ones. But number 3 is competition. It's sizing up your opponent. It's noticing how many people they have on their team. It's noticing what type of weaponry they have, and then making a list of those things. There is a video cast that I have done. It's called 8QF. It's 8 quadrants to fight in. I know there's not 8 quadrants, there's only 4 quadrants, but I call it 8 quadrants to fight in on purpose. So if you're unfamiliar with that, use that chart and use it to analyze the 8 different areas where you could be fighting your competition in, and that could give you some clarity. I haven't done anything on analysis for those types of things, but it could come up later. And we're going to do, our next video is going to be on information warfare, which will be kind of an exciting one. So look for that, okay? All right, we're going to move on to number 4. Okay, Number 4 is society. Society is a very sneaky obstacle in our lives. Unless you're a professional celebrity or a mass marketer of, let's say, movies, or a politician, or somebody who works in a very broad scale, society will probably sneak up on you, because societies never stay the same. They're always in a state of changing. They're an organic, breathing, living thing. But it changes just slowly enough to sneak up on you most of the time. So that the world that you grow up in is a lot different from the world that your parents grew up in. And the world that your parents grew up in is a lot different from the world your grandparents grew up in. But really, the time intervals from each generation is not very large. But the changes can be dramatic in style and clothing, in morals, in norms, and in all sorts of ways. So how do you use this? Well, what you want to do is you want to keep an eye on trends. Are you well liked? Is your company well liked? Are you well liked as a person? Is your religion acceptable? Is your color acceptable? Is it cool now, or is it uncool now? Or what do people say about your company behind your back? What do people say about your work? And things like that. So that's something that you want to be sensitized to. And if you do any type of selling or marketing, and if you have employees, then you're probably sensitized to the market more than an individual would be. But you do want to keep your eye and your ear to the ground for changes in attitudes, political parties, new subdivisions, people moving in, housing developments, condominiums. Don't just walk past those things and ignore them. That means that the world around you is changing. So you need to pay attention to what's going on in society. That could be good for you, or it could be bad for you. So pay attention to what's happening. Okay, our 5th and our final category is government. Now, I know I'm not covering every single type of obstacle that you would run into or could run into as a human being. Like, how do I talk to my teenager about smoking? Or something like that. I can't cover all of those things, but this is 5 very broad categories for you as a gamer. So our 5th category is government. Government is just what it is. I mean, it's supposed to be this fiduciary that handles the processes and utilities that our cities require to run on, but then there's also the personal things. Personal things are where you get involved. What regulations do you want to see passed? What regulations do you not want to see passed? What changes do you want to see? So the typical way that you use that is by trying to get regulations passed on your competition, and you have to be aware of rules, obstacles, fees, certifications, licenses, and things like that as they apply to you as a person. And that's how you would be sensitized to government being an obstacle. Now, in my own life, as most of you guys know, I am trapped in Operation Bird Dog. I'm outside now for roughly 16 years and 11 months. One of the biggest obstacles that I have in my life are 2 of them. Number 1 is the government. Even though in America we have a system of checks and balances, it isn't working. Calls to the FBI are not working. Calls to the police are not working. Calls to internal affairs hasn't worked. I went from internal affairs to the Office Inspector General, from the Office Inspector General to the State Attorney, from the State Attorney to the U.S. Attorney General, and then back through the cycle all over again. That has happened in Arizona, and it's happened here in Los Angeles. I've also had to go through the ACLU. They rejected the case. I went to civil attorneys, and they rejected the case. My case is a slam dunk in the courtroom. It's easy to prove. It's not difficult to prove. So that's an example of government being an obstacle to you when theoretically it shouldn't be an obstacle whatsoever. So why doesn't the government work in my particular behalf? That would be because of obstacle number 2, and that would be, number 4, excuse me, and that would be society. It's the society that we live in that can buy politicians, that can buy off FBI agents, that can falsify police reports, that can falsify powers of attorney, that can tell the U.S. Army to seize control of my assets and make me work or assign me to Hollywood or something like that. I don't work for Hollywood. I've never met anybody in Hollywood, and I'm not an actor whatsoever. But somehow I'm yoked together with them, and I strongly suspect that they're a part of this scam, as well as hate crimes on possibly my mother and my father. And then ultimately, I think there's supposed to be a hate crime on me. And there's one that's ongoing on me at all times as I remain out here. But those are the obstacles that are in my life. At the beginning of this video, I told you the typical ways that you overcome your obstacles. You outnumber them, you outsmart them, you outmaneuver them, you sidestep them, you have more expertise in them, you hire somebody to handle them for you, like a lawyer, things like that. But in my particular case, that isn't working. And in my particular case, I shouldn't have to do that. One phone call to the FBI should have cleared it up from the very beginning, but it didn't work. Going through the supervisory agencies didn't work, and has not worked, and is not working. I hear that there are very many, a lot of members of society who are also pleading for my release, and that's not working either. So that's an example of the government failing you. And despite your paying of federal taxes, or your mom and dad and your grandparents paying federal taxes, which can be a couple $1 million, and the one time that you need them, they may not answer the phone. So it's something to be aware of. You need to keep an eye on society, and you need to keep an eye on government, because those two things go hand in hand. People in government are selected from society. So remember that when you see the constitution of a country changing, that its representatives are in government, and that will in turn affect you. All right? Okay, that's going to wrap it up for this week. I hope you guys had fun. That's 5 broad categories of obstacles, something for you to think about and something for you to act on. Don't pray, hoping for God to do it for you. Nobody's going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. There's no time to waste. Get to work. Have fun. Make it fun. Make a game out of it and go for it. All right? I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.